This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found on Gadget Geeks show number 498, recorded on July 22nd, 2021. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from, Mike, a very hazy Bellevue, Nebraska. When you're outside, you were kind of flying around this week. Did you see any? Have you seen the smoke from? Like,
no, I haven't.
Smoke. Like I was out there last night, actually, really beautiful sunset, but we're starting to get some of that smoke from the west. You know, there's big fires going on in the west, kind of hazy.
See, I've missed all this news. I've been on the East Coast all week, so I haven't even. I noticed the haze when I got back today, but I had no idea what it was from.
Yeah, so our thoughts go out to everybody in the west where it's super dry, and they are having gigantic fires again this year.
Got it.
And so just be safe out there. You know, if you're living out west and you're in one of those danger zones, we're hoping the best for you. But that smoke is making its way here, and we haven't had any rain to kind of pull it down. Our cars are going to be super dirty the next time it rains. Yeah, just sooty and dirty. Of course, we'll post a few show notes this week out there at the Average Guy .tv. A couple reminders kind of before we get started. One big thanks to our Patreon supporters out there. If you go to the averageguy.tv/Patreon, if you want to support the show. I noticed Eric sent me a note this week, and he was like, "Hey, dude, where's the audio?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, no, I haven't done that in a while." And it had been like a year and a half since I've been putting the video. You know, you can get the full video. So if you're a regular podcast subscriber and you want to get the full video, I mean, you can get that on the live channel, but you can also get it through Patreon. Just a little more convenient that way. I'll also start posting the full audio if you want to download that. And Eric was going to listen to it on the road. So,
yeah, and that's cool because now in Patreon, you can add that URL to any other podcast app. So you can, from Patreon, you can import that feed if it's the audio only feed. Yeah. I know a lot of podcasts have actually been doing kind of like what we used to do, right? You get pre-show, post-show. One of the podcasts you guys all recommended to me, and I'm totally forgetting the name now. They do it that way. So on the Patreon, you get full access to the post show and everything like that. What is that show, Jim? That's going to drive me nuts. Anyway, yeah. So it's kind of cool that you can now take that and you don't have to go to the Patreon app. You can just pull that into whatever app you're using.
Right through. And I think that'll happen when I put the audio out there. I'll check it out this weekend. Not too many of you actually, I watch the numbers on those, and not too many of you actually do it, but that's okay. It's available for you if you can't make it live on Thursday nights and you want to get both pre and post show. We did a little beer pour in the pre-show, and if you want to get a hold of that, the easiest way to do it, the easiest way to do it is on our YouTube live channel or $5 Patreon monthly subscription. I'll get you there as well. Big thanks for everybody who does that, and we appreciate it. Mike, last week was actually a really popular show. Like,
because where we hated Jim, I was really concerned after I talked about just destroying all my servers. I was going to be outcast from our podcast community.
No, it's the opposite. I think people appreciated the honesty, the frustration. I think a lot of the things that we faced, others have faced as well. And I won't be able to read all the feedback tonight, but I did get a couple bits of feedback that are good, a little on the long side. So hang out with me. I want to read it all. But a great opportunity. Of course, we always appreciate that feedback. Couple ways you can do that. One, send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. You can do it that way. The easiest way is send us a 30-second voicemail. I'll play Jim Shoemaker's from back, it's almost 2 months ago now, but we'll play Jim Shoemaker's message here in a second. But Kevin,
how do they send those, Jim? How do they send a voicemail?
Yeah, you're right. I just blew right past that, didn't I? HomeGadgetGeeks.com. Bottom right-hand corner, there's a little blue microphone. Just press it. You got 30 seconds. Leave us a message. You can even leave a funny one. It's all good, but love your feedback that way. And as we get more of it, we'll read it here on the show. Kevin Schoonover sent in a note to us. He said, Sunday night, I listened to last week's show, Flying Home from vacation. Thanks for doing that, Kevin. Great content as always. Like the direction you took on the complexity and how much is too much. I spent too much time in user groups helping people troubleshoot issues. I'm sure that's a really common thing for a lot of folks in our group. Networking issues are the biggest area, specifically when people do not believe they have a networking issue. The common answer in the user groups is you need mesh. Mesh fixes everything. Mesh is not the savior to networking issues. In many cases, it makes things worse. The other big area of concern that people keep buying stuff and adding it on and wonder why things are getting worse. Well, we talked about that. Like
100%. Yeah.
Especially you got a cheap router or you got a cheap Wi-Fi. You bought a cheap components and your
cheap Cisco switch that probably should have been sent to the junkyard before it was put on eBay. And Mike bought it, and it's still in his rack this week. Still have not gotten around.
Still working out there.
Well, working is relative, Jim.
Yeah,
as of right now. We're here.
That's the good thing, at least here. He says, I'm very behind in listening to your show. If you've recently done a networking show, you may want to hold off. The content would be aimed at the average home networking person, tips and advice to overcome common issues. In other words, Kevin wants to come on and talk about networking. So Kevin, we'll get you on here.
That'd be fantastic.
It'd be a good conversation. We probably need to do it about once a year.
Well, and it's funny how I think, there's a lot of complexity that people have added, especially users who are trying to get a little more into the fun home, self-hosting side of things, right? Because when you start adding Docker containers, even when you start adding Unraid or any other sort of NAS, and then you start doing Docker, right? Those all have their own network. How do those networks interact with your main network? Network masks, all of that. I mean, I remember when I first set up all of my Unraid stuff and Docker and everything. I mean, there was a lot of issues. And like Kevin says, a lot of times you don't realize it's a network issue. You're like, why is this Docker not working? The Docker, the whatever, Docker file this is, it's not working. And they're like, well, no, it's a network issue, but you don't notice that. It's not the first thing you think of.
When you were over at my place last weekend or 2 weekends ago, whatever it was, you kind of saw how I have like everything kind of grouped and wiped.
Right? I like that.
And it just is easier. I've got a big 24 port switch, not managed. It's a D-Link. It's a dumb one, but I don't need that complexity of a managed switch. I'm not doing what you're doing. I have one LAN. I'm using the Bitdefender box, so it's much different, but I do group them. I kind of group my hardware and really try not to use Wi-Fi unless I absolutely have to. That's kind of one of the things I don't want to do.
Yeah, and that was one of those. So I saw the way you set it up, Jim. And then, so we're actually going to be finishing our basement here in a bit. And I was talking to the contractor, and he's like looking at my rack, and he's like, okay, yeah, like, is this all staying? Like, am I, I was like, yeah. I said, all the wires run right here. He's like, all right, so okay, we'll plan around that. He's like, yeah, we'll make sure we wrap that up as we start to do all the construction down here, because that's, all that dust and everything flying around. And it just got me thinking, I'm like, man, I really wish for a month, I might go super simple and literally strip everything out, bring it upstairs, have one dumb switch, dumb router, and bring it upstairs just for a little bit and see how that goes.
Might be worth it. Burn it down. See what you really need.
It's a good excuse, right? That's what I'm kind of thinking. Like, it's a good excuse to be like, okay, I really don't want my rack getting just covered in sawdust and everything. So do we burn it down just for a month and then bring it back if we really missed it?
Right. It's good. I think a good excuse to give it a try, especially in that scenario. Neil, who sends me notes all the time. So Neil, thanks for doing that. I always appreciate it. Neil writes, I listened to it twice in referencing the show. I listened to it twice already. First off, I could relate to the generator segment. Thursday, a tree fell at the end of our street and took out the power to our barn. So I had to fire up the old generator. Amazingly, it starts with half a pole. We have frequent outages, so I have left the two freezers and security cam gear plugged into an outlet strip. This is a good idea, by the way, with a long extension cord that can reach outside, so I don't have to pull out the freezers from the wall to the plug. That's a really good idea, right?
Yeah.
Have those things on that. Next, the show kind of tells the state of home IT gear, home cloud, home automation. So many dilemmas and decisions to be made. Which things are worth taking into the home IT shop and which would just go outside? What can go wrong? And what happens if I'm away on business? when it does, right?
Yep.
Mike, what's the propensity of things breaking when you're not there? Right?
All the time. I just dealt with this week. We'll talk about another issue I ran into this week.
Then he says, finally, I do this separate VLAN trick myself. It's an overkill versus just blocking access from a specific device to the internet. What if a switch goes and I have to pull in one that doesn't do VLAN? What if I'm troubleshooting and stick a cable into a port that doesn't have the VLAN that is appropriate? Ubiquiti has made it easy to spit out multiple SSIDs, each with their own VLAN, but am I overthinking it?
No. Well, I mean, think about it. Neil is really describing exactly what happened to me. And I actually remembered a part of my issue that Neil brings up. It was plugging a cable into a port that's not assigned that VLAN. So for me, remember, so all my ports were acting up. I was trying to find ports that were still working, found a port that was working, but it wasn't tagged correctly with the VLAN. Well, so then on that Cisco switch, I got to go get into the command line of that thing. And it's been 1.5 2 years since I programmed that thing. I don't work on Cisco gear ever. That's not my day job. So I had to go Google what is the command line for adding the VLAN tag and all that stuff. Oh, it was just one issue after another that I ran into. So yeah, I agree. That's exactly what I was running into. PoE and VLANs was the bane of my existence.
Yeah. Yeah, and you got to remember that, right? On what's on PoE, what's used,
right?
Way more than I'd ever handle, Mike. I'll just be honest with you. Neil continues. He says, in any case, it really resonated with me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it twice. Keep them coming, Neil from near Cincinnati. And then he says, P.S. A reminder to listeners: carbon monoxide kills, so be very careful where you put your generator.
That's a good point.
It really is, and they're very careful in the instructions to, 15 to 25 feet from any open window. I don't know what that is in meters. From let's just say 3 to 5 meters. From any open window. You think in the summer you're firing that generator up outside, you may be putting it underneath the window, right?
Yeah.
So there's that to kind of keep in mind. We have it down and away from our house, but it is a good idea of what we're gonna a little bit later in the show. I'm gonna ask for your advice on some things with that generator, so hang tight on that. But Neil, great reminder. One of the things, I installed in the shed a carbon monoxide detector just in case. And,
that's a smart place to put one too.
And we're going to talk about why here at the end of the show, because I had a device that was burning in there, and you just don't want to, you should know. So
yeah,
to go back to our conversation last week, if you're putting those fire, smoke detectors in your house, date them so you know when to replace them. And probably a good idea to have, carbon monoxide alarms in there as well, just in case. We have one right by the furnace, just in case. And I think I bought one of those combo smoke and carbon monoxide.
Smart
to get that done. Jim Shoemaker. Jim, sorry this took me so long to play this back on my birthday. He sent me a note right after the Subaru Legacy announcement, and Jim had a few things to say about that.
Congratulations on the new Subaru Legacy. We have a Forester, and one suggestion I'll make is that if you want the in-car Wi-Fi, let the 1-month trial expire. Let AT&T send you multiple offers via email, trying to get you to sign up again. We finally pulled the trigger when they got it down to $15 a month, unlimited data. It's been very nice for people in Wi-Fi's and laptops and whatever in the car on trips. So thumbs up.
$15 a month extra Wi-Fi in the car. Mike, are you doing it?
That's a good deal. So in our Chevy Traverse, and the reason it's important for my family is we have the 2 kids, the young kids that don't have phones yet, but they do have tablets for the long road trips, and they do need Wi-Fi. And so our Chevy Traverse has had the option. We've used it in the past. We got nowhere close, though, to 15 for unlimited. I think I was paying 17 for 2 gigs. And those kids, when they're watching movies, they blew through that on one trip down to the farm. Like we make it there and they've blown through 2 gigs. So we ended up canceling that. And now I just use my Verizon phone because that has the hotspot capability and it's good enough. But man, if I could have 15 unlimited in the car, I would probably heavily consider doing that. And only because I only pay for hotspot data on my phone, not Hannah's. And so she can't do the sharing. So if she takes the kids to the farm by herself, they're kind of out of luck. So yeah, that would be a good deal. I think it depends on your scenario. Jim, I don't know if that'd be worth it for you, just how much
No.
you would use hotspot in your car.
Nah,
But man, for
none
me,
at all.
it's a
Yeah.
huge deal.
Yeah, none at all. In fact, I started setting that up in the car, and I wasn't going to set up theirs, but then I can make mine. I can connect the car to my phone and serve it through the car, and I put in a car SSID, and I said, wait a minute, like talk about overcomplicating it. Like if I was, first of all, 99% of the time, I'm the only one in that car. Let's
Yeah.
just be really clear. It is a one-person vehicle for the most part. Every once in a while, Sammy's with me, but she's got her own phone and her own coverage, right? It's just a different use case scenario for me. I would never need it. And if I did, like you, I'd turn on my hotspot and just be like, hey, I think it's Jim's iPhone 12. Just
Right.
attached to that, here's the code to get it done, and you can do it in there. None of my kids need it. They all have phones with, but in your situations, completely different. Your kids don't have phones. You got kids you want to give entertainment to. So I just thought it was funny how I was already trying to overcomplicate it. But I could have an SSID set up and that kind of stuff. By the way, love that car, except the Apple Car. Is it Apple CarPlay?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not reliable. Right
It's
now,
not?
sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and I don't
That's
know why.
weird.
And I'm pulling the cable and
Is it bad cable?
plug it back in. I bought a brand new one. Now it's not
Weird.
the end of the listen. It's a total first world plus.
Well,
problem.
that would be the end of the world for me though. Like if I honestly, I would the connectivity to the phone, Hannah's car freaks out all the time. The Traverse. There's not Apple CarPlay in it. It's just USB and you can play audio from your phone. And hers will lock up quite a bit. And it drives me absolutely. If that was my car, I'd be taking it to have it serviced. Because,
well, I'm going to ask
drive me nuts.
next time I'm in. I'm going to ask, have you guys been having problems with this? Because it's not consistent. Now, in 2 button pushes, I can have it streaming via Bluetooth, and it's fine.
Right. Yeah,
So,
that's a good point. Yeah.
I don't sweat it too much. Again, first world plus problems. You're
Definitely.
kind of like, come on. So, but I will next time I go in to service it with them, or I'm by the dealership. I may swing into the service center, say, hey, are you guys having trouble with this? Because it's a little weird that it doesn't work for me. So, a follow up to the Tesla. Because this is going to be kind of a follow up show today. Follow up to the Tesla. Today, I officially canceled the truck order.
You got it done, huh?
Yeah, I did. And by the way, it could not be easier. Like log in. They're like, there's a edit your order, click on it, cancel. Yeah. Why? They don't care. There's a drop down. You don't even have to fill it in.
And refunded pretty quick.
Now I haven't looked, I put it on my credit card and I haven't looked at the
Yeah.
credit card yet. I imagine it's that fast.
I would think so too.
Yeah. So I'm not worried about it. I'll check it out here a little bit later. But yeah, so that's that piece, at least for now, is done. Can't help but going back to that conversation that we had when you were here and we were talking about that Ford truck, and Sarah's like, I'll take the Ford truck.
Right. I mean, well, yeah, there's a lot of things that, there's pros and cons, right? Cons, first generation all electric truck.
Yeah.
In general, right? Like that's going to be one of the first gen trucks, let alone from Ford. And then you've also got, the issues people have been having with Electrify America. So I don't know if a lot of you guys know, but so Teslas and all other EVs run on 2 separate charging networks. Tesla has its own charging network, and then all the other EVs have a different charging network. And primarily that's going to be Electrify America. And so I've been doing a lot of watching of YouTube videos to see and kind of prep and see how this is going to work owning an electric vehicle. And a lot of these EV guys, there's, by the way, a really cool community of EV guys on YouTube. They do a lot of really cool testing, but a lot of them will do long range road trip testing. Let's go from Colorado to California and back and see what that is like in an EV. And these Electrify America stations will sometimes, number one, not even register. Or actually the most common problem is they will charge fast for like a minute, and then all of a sudden they'll kick down to like super slow charging for no reason. Not based off the battery profile, like everything says it should be good to go. and they haven't been working. And then also the plug-in charge where they're supposed to be kind of like a Tesla. You know, a Tesla, you don't have to swipe your credit card, plug in anything. You just plug it into your car and it knows what it is, and it just does it, and it charges your account. That's supposed to work for Electrify America, but on the Mustang Mach-E's, they've been having a lot of issues with that plug-in charge. So, going back to first world problem, Gyms. Yeah, but I mean, that portion specifically, yes, but the overall charging, if I'm on a long road trip, like I kind of need to know that I can charge my car.
Right.
That's like not knowing if there's going to be a gas station between here and there.
Yeah.
Right. Like, or that a gas station, the pump is going to pump like extremely. So it's going to take you 2 hours to pump your car up instead of, 20, 30 minutes like it would normally. So it's something that's kind of interesting on those, just the pros and cons of it. But like we were talking about, having a generator essentially for your house being a big battery without being a generator, it's kind of nice.
Yeah. And I think, a truck we would not take the truck on long trips. Like we trade her out back in on it.
Right.
So that'd be her car. And then, if we were going to take a trip, we'd take it in the Legacy for sure. That's a sweet ride. Right. So, the truck's most likely going to be here most of the time. So I don't know. Listen, I'm not going to do it this summer. I probably give it 2 or 3 years. Let's get the Legacy paid off. I don't like making car payments.
Yeah.
Get that Legacy paid off and we'll get things figured out. So, going forward, we'll see how it goes. Couple things, Mike. I'm looking for some input. This is audience that for the live folks, and even for those who are listening on the podcast or there on YouTube. Love to hear from you on the next 2 items I'm about to talk about. One is, and this was super cool. I finally found. I've been waiting for the Ring stick-up cams to go on sale on Woot. I didn't have to have it, so that's it's one of those things like, okay, I'll wait, and they were half price. So, I picked up a new, and I think actually this is supposed to be used or whatever, but it's got all the stickers like it's new.
If it was used, it was very lightly used, or maybe refurbished.
Yeah, maybe the stickers are all. It looks brand new. Anyways. White stick-up cam. Also, I showed this in the after show the other day. I picked up half price, so for $22, I picked up the solar panel for it.
Oh, that's a good deal. $22. That's a
good
deal.
So this was 50, and then this was 22.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of waiting for that. I've been wanting. Okay, this is where I need advice, and I'm going to ask you, but you can either send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv, put it in the YouTube comments below, put it in the chat room here. I really got it for the backyard. So if you know my backyard configuration, and you've been there now, you've seen it. You got a deck. You come right out the back door. There's a big deck. I really want to put it on the
deck.
It's a big deck.
That was way bigger than I thought it was. Like from all the pictures you ever show on the podcast, does not do it justice. It's a massive deck.
It's good size. We enjoy it. So, there's a couple things I could do, and one would be put it up on the corner of the house that goes across the deck, shows the shed, and covers kind of the whole backyard.
Okay.
Another one would be on the other side of the fence. I have a little fence that divides the deck from kind of the lower part of the yard, and I could put it on the other side of that fence. Now the other trick on this is I got to find the back is shaded. So I also have to find a spot where this solar panel is going to get a couple hours of sun every day. The power went out, and I got to troubleshoot this and figure it out. But I mentioned this last week. The power that was recharging my webcam or my Ring doorbell has stopped, and I'm having to charge that thing every 2 weeks. I don't want to go out there and have to charge this thing every 2 weeks. The other thing I got to think about is I don't know if I want it watching me on the deck all the time. Like I don't know, if I want it going on, because you go out there and then it starts buzzing my watch, and you got to go into the app and shut it off.
Yeah.
The real goal is to protect the shed. That's kind of the goal on this, is to cover the front end of that shed that I have out there. Or so I could go on the fence on the house side facing the shed, kind of hidden, or do I just make it really visible on the front of the shed so that it's a deterrent? Like, this is what we have on the garage is I've got it in plain sight, just out of reach, kind of a deterrent. Like don't come up the driveway type deal.
Right.
So Mike, three options, kind of those three options. You're in my shoes.
Mhm.
What do you think? What are your options? What do you think?
So number one, I love the deterrent aspect, right? Like especially like I love all the home defense stuff, and number one's just making your house not a target in the first place. And so deterrence is a big part of that. So I love your concept there of putting it on the shed. I think if I were you, I would put it on the shed facing back towards the house. And we talked about this a while ago, Jim. I don't know if you remember. I ended up turning off all alerts on my cameras. All of them, because I ended up ignoring them anyway. Like, honestly, I wasn't acting upon them because it was honestly probably PD outside, my dog. It was, the package man in front. And so really for mine, it was being able to look back in the past. You guys remember it was a big use for me in the past when my car got broken into in my driveway. Was able to go back, get the footage, give it to the cops. That was like the ideal use case for my cameras, besides the number one case being deterrence. And Jim, I don't know if you've been since I upgraded the ones in the driveway. They stick out. Like you can see in my driveway, just like you. I actually liked the way you did yours. So I made mine white. They sticks out from my house. They on both sides of the garage. And so that's my number one thing is just hopefully they see it. They don't even do it. The only downside to putting it on the shed, pointing it back at the house, because doesn't your door to your shed faces kind of your house,
Yeah,
right?
it faces the house. Yeah, faces
so
the
you
street.
could if you put it right above the door, it would be facing towards the house.
Yes.
The only downside about that is, and I guess if you're turning off alerts, it doesn't matter. So that kind of defeats what I'm about to say. But I have noticed my favorite angle in my backyard. I have one out on the patio that faces back towards the house, and I look at that camera more often, because it gives a better view of the door if someone was at the door instead of like right above it. When you're right above the door, you're not going to get a good shot of them.
Right.
But you'll get a good shot of people creeping around your back patio area.
Or even in the back, even at the back door. Now I won't get their face.
Yeah. Right.
But
it will see through the windows. Right. That's what I was about to say. Yeah. So my camera sees through the windows. So it'll record, when you got to think at night when your lights are on inside and nothing on outside, and if you have your blinds open, it records everything inside. So just know that.
That's
just
our
have
bedroom.
that known. Well, yeah. So we could have Jim after dark. It could be a whole other stream, for this. But just know that. Yeah. It was one of those. Oh, that's good to know. That looks right into our living room window, and
that is a good thought. It's also the shed's Wi-Fi wise pretty far away. So the current chime that is the Wi-Fi unifier for all my Ring devices, it sits right now in a bedroom that is between the camera on the garage and the camera on the door, and it's all close, and it's a great signal. We learned early on Ring does not like weak signals. Like it just really struggles if the signal is weak. If I'm all the way out at the shed, I'm going to either have to install an extender for the Wi-Fi. I mean, it's going to need to be strong in the shed, so, I mean, there's that. I think, Mike, before I get too crazy about this, I'll probably temporarily set it up in both locations or all three locations and just try it for a week, see how it does, before I go to install it, I may just tape it like where I think it would be good and give it a try.
Yeah. I think, I would probably end up going, because I totally forgot about the range. That's a good point. And it's an annoying thing to solve for.
Super annoying.
So with that being said, I would go for a massive padlock lock on the shed, not worried about it, and have the deterrence factor be on the back patio. Because really, I want to deter them from getting into my house. If they get into the shed, they get in the shed, right? If they really want to break through a massive lock, I'll still catch them on video after the fact.
Yeah.
But I would probably have the deterrent on the back of the house.
Well, and then, if that's the case, maybe I'm putting it on the corner of the house. So they got to come around.
That's a good idea.
Right? And they'd see it. It'd be high enough. I could also get the morning. I could mount that solar panel to get full blast in the morning. We won't get any afternoon or evening, but full blast of sun in the morning to recharge that battery. But then, have that thing dropped down and facing my back door. Now, it is going to pick up in that scenario. Every time we go out on the deck, it's going to pick it up.
Yeah.
To be honest, it does that when we go out and wash the cars or when I'm walking in and out of the driveway. And I've kind of learned to ignore it. What I have enjoyed though is, and I told my neighbor this, by the way. He knows that he sets off my cams, and he actually kind of likes it because it's watching his car and his driveway as well.
Yeah.
But I get kind of notifications whenever there's any movement out front. Somebody's, checking the mail, or the UPS guy comes, or Amazon comes. So I haven't ignored, the notifications yet.
So you're kind of used to ignoring it when you should,
Yeah.
not ignoring it when you should be
Yeah.
opening them up.
Yeah.
Joe
Well,
brings up a good point. He says the alerts caused by the IR reflecting off spider webs on his shop cameras wakes him up sometimes. Joe, that's what made me turn off, honestly, mine. Like, number one, it was all the cars and everything like that. And I did zones and everything, but you're right. No matter how good of zones you set at night, spider webs, moths, all of them set off my cameras all the time. It drives me nuts.
Yeah. I haven't had any bug problems. We had a bird land on the garage ring and just perched there for a while, checked out the camera. You could see his
Got a good photo
face,
shoot.
checking the camera out, just kind of looking around up there. It was kind of cool to see that. So we don't get a lot of problems with the cameras, so I love the idea kind of only behind the fence. Kid can't see the deck. It just sees the shed, but then it's harder to get that thing charged there. And it's not as a deterrent because you can't see it. It's like a surprise, we caught you on the camera. So I think what I'm going to do, and you can, if you've got some suggestions, probably won't permanently install this thing for the next couple of weeks. So send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Put it in the YouTube comments down below if you're on YouTube watching this. Love, you've heard kind of the options. Love your feedback on it. And where do you think I should put it? I will probably mess around with it in a couple different locations, just to be honest, to see, let's test it, see what it does.
Right.
And kind of go from there. Second thing I'm looking for some advice on. We talked last week about the generator, and I got kind of hooked on this idea of creating a box. I would plug the 240 volt because it's got a 240 20 amp, I think, and then it's got two 120 20 amp GFCI protected outlets. So there's 3 outlets, right?
Okay.
120, 120, 240. The 240, of course, can power up a bunch of things. The 120 is a little less, but together the same. There's all kinds of equations with power. We'll stay out of that.
Yeah.
But one of the thoughts was come off the 240 and power a box that had some smarts to it. So I was starting to look through kind of what's kind of out there to keep track of power, and how could I kind of what I want to see in the end. I had my neighbors, which by the way, we got a really nice gift card from one neighbor, and the other neighbor brought over fresh sourdough baked bread, which was great. Like, you got to love that. I had that at lunch today. It was delicious. So, so a box that's got some kind of smart monitoring in it where I could, as the generator's running, I could check the power usage. I didn't want to leave as the generator's running. I didn't want to leave the house because I was afraid if something happened to the generator, my neighbors would be screwed.
Right.
That was kind of my thought. So here's what I've looked through so far. I've taking a 240 plug, bringing that into a box and breaking it up into separate outlets, and then running some smart plugs off of it. All the plugs I could find are 15 amp. The smart ones are 15 amp plugs. What I didn't look at is I didn't look at smart plugs that are installed. I was looking at the ones that you would just plug into the outlet and turn on and attach to the Wi-Fi and those kinds of plugs.
Right.
But I didn't look like permanently. I don't know if they have
now
those.
You got me checking that out too. That's a good point.
One of the options, of course, well, most of the just plug-in outlets are only 15 amps. And, I may want 20 and not 15 on those. The plugs themselves are 20 amp plugs. I know the GFCI breakers work because we have them popped before. I've also bought the circuit breaker on that thing, pulling a little too much juice. They also have, like what we talked about before, devices you can buy that you can put in between the power plug and what you're plugging into it to again, the whole goal here is I want to monitor. One, I want to know it's running. Two, I kind of want to monitor the power use. Like, how much power am I don't need to, by the way. There's on the generator, there's 4 lights. And it says, 0, 25, 50, 75. Actually, that's not true. It says 25, 50, 75 max. Those are the 4. And I'd like a little more, I like a little more than that.
Data. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Kind of like what's it drawing here? What's it doing? How much are we drawing on this thing?
Yeah, because you're right. Because my first thought when we went to this was that it would be something like a Zigbee or Z-Wave outlet. And my thought there was that, with Zigbee or Z-Wave, you just get the $4 from, AliExpress dongle, plug that into a computer somewhere, and all of a sudden you can start just pulling whatever data you want, monitoring it. I'm sure there are some great already built out, charts for these sort of things. And I bet you could do a really cool self-hosted version. But then you brought up the amp issue, and I just looked up the Zigbee outlets I would use, and you're right, these ones are actually 10 amps. Mm-hmm. I didn't think about the amperage. That's a really good point. But really, because my thought behind it was, I don't know if I would necessarily want to be tied into like an ecosystem. That's why I thought Zigbee Z-Wave or Wi-Fi, but Zigbee Z-Wave would be able to, you can usually pull a ton of data from those things.
Yeah, it would. Oh, this one's got a price drop. Look at that. Thank you, Microsoft Edge. If you're watching, let's see. Can you guys see that? No, you can't see the Edge. Shopping on Microsoft Edge just popped up and say, hey, the price on this product has recently dropped from 29 to 19. Although that's also on Amazon. So, yeah. So here's another, Mike. Here's another example of where I could, have a single device that's kind of designed. This is an outdoor smart plug. Wi-Fi enabled outlet. Doesn't say right up front what the amps are on this thing. Let's see if we can see it it's a 15 amp. I think maybe I'm going to be limited to 15. And maybe that's not the end of the world.
That's enough. That's a lot.
Yeah. Maybe that's not.
But I wonder if this thing, the other thing I've learned about these things is monitoring the power usage is not like, just because it says smart, a lot of times they won't tell you the current draw on the power.
Oh yeah.
Right. It's just, I can turn it on, I can turn it off, and some other things, but it doesn't tell you the actual wattage or amperage on the draw.
Yeah. Well, and I haven't messed with one of these,
Yeah.
before,
It's like this one I would guess wouldn't. I'm guessing this one's just a timer, and then you can turn it on or off. I doubt this one would actually pull the monitoring data.
And I've got some Casa ones that I use in the house, and they tell me how long power is being pulled, but they don't give me any indication of just how much. Really, I think the what I really am looking for is it still drawing power? Like that's the first requirement. Is power still being supplied? Because if it stops, I want an alert that says, hey, this thing is stopped, right? Much like we cooked a pork butt on Sunday, and I had the meter in there, and dude, that thing is sweet. Like the more I use that thing,
right?
I had it going to coming into the Amazon to one of my Fire tablets, and then that was going Wi-Fi, and then I could access it from anywhere. And I went to Phil's to mow the lawn, and I was monitoring the grill while I was mowing the lawn over at his house. That was pretty great. So that's one of the things I'm looking for. If anybody has seen one of these where it kind of monitors for you, it's got alerts associated with it. I want to know if the power is still working, because if it goes off, there's some things I need to do. Not so important if I get how much is being used, but that'd be cool. Like, Mike, it'd be a good idea how much of the generator is being used. So
yeah, well, it goes back to that light thing you were talking about, the 25, 50, 75. You want more than just these lights that show you how much load is being pulled.
Well, and the other thought is, I've got that Belkin device that you plug in, and then You plug in everything else to it, and it tells you, do I need one device for them all to run through first?
Oh, you're just the watt meter kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that the right? Now it doesn't. This one, I couldn't use this one because it's not smart. I mean, it just does it. Like it
Yeah.
won't tell me if
Same.
it's off. So
Yep.
So if you know of any devices like that, save me a little time on all this research, but this is kind of what I'm looking at first I was thinking I'd build this box, and now I'm kind of thinking, no, I really probably just want a smart device that I can plug into those plugs and then extend everything out through it and give it a try. If you've got some good ideas, send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Put it down there in the comments in YouTube, and love to have your feedback on it. And we can go around and around and around. I'm not in a hurry, by the way, to figure this one out, but it would be good to get some smarts in it. Mike, in another follow-up conversation from last week, you had some SSL issues on your stuff.
Yeah. So this was actually an issue that I have apparently been having for a very long time. It just didn't become relevant until the SSL certificate had actually expired. So here's the setup. You guys know that I run a reverse proxy, right? And I've always used the Let's Encrypt Docker container, which the last year or year before that switched to its name to Swag because it wasn't officially Let's Encrypt. So a lot of self-hosters use the Swag Docker container for their reverse proxy. Reverse proxy, all that is meaning, let's say I have Wieger.com as my domain. If I want cameras.wieger.com to lead me directly to my security camera footage from outside the house, then I want homeassistant.wieger.com from outside the house to get me to my home assistant. Essentially what it does is it takes the 443 and port 80 ports, forwards them to one Docker container, which is your reverse proxy. And because of what subdomain, if it's cameras, if it's home assistant, whatever, it knows where to direct that traffic inside your network. So you don't have to open up a ton of different ports for everything you're self-hosting. You just open up 443 and 80 and point it at your reverse proxy and let your reverse proxy then know, where do I send that data? Well, all is well and good, but the one added benefit of doing that is you can actually add in SSL. And with SSL, typically you're going to use Let's Encrypt to generate these certificates. And so I had been on Swag for the longest time. Everything is great when you run with Swag. It auto-generate. It gets your Let's Encrypt certificate. It renews it like 30 days out from when it needs to be renewed. Like you literally just set it and forget it and never think about it. Well, a while ago, and this is where I still don't know. I don't know what caused the issue, but there were two things I did a while ago. Number one, I switched from Swag to the Nginx Proxy Manager Docker, which is a beautiful web GUI interface. The Swag does not have a web GUI interface. You're literally just writing up little proxy conf files, text edit files, right? And you're using those to formulate and tell the reverse proxy what to do. But with Nginx Proxy Manager Docker, beautiful. It's like using a web GUI. Very modern, very great. So I switched over to that. That was the first thing I did. Number two, the other change I made was that I went to Cloudflare for the DNS for all of my domains that I hold. So all of my domain, I have a lot of domains. I have them for public websites. I have my own internal domain that I use for all my home stuff. Switched them all to, so I still have them. I bought them through Hover, right? So I go to Hover to, change things. But the DNS settings that you put in are now not done on Hover. Those are done over on Cloudflare, which is fantastic. Cloudflare is awesome. You can get a free account, works great. But it does add an extra layer of things you can do, and something broke essentially my ability to renew my SSL certificate. And this was a solid day of trying to figure out, probably a day's worth of time trying to figure out what was causing the issue. I could not get an SSL certificate to generate. And so there's a lot of things. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail here just because I have a feeling that there's at least one of you that might run into this issue in the future, because everyone uses the same reverse proxy Dockers if you're self-hoster. So in the end, what I ended up doing that made this all work, spoiler alert, I was never able to get Nginx Proxy Manager to successfully get even a new SSL certificate from Let's Encrypt. It gave an internal error every single time. I turned off all the proxying in Cloudflare. I turned off all of the HTTPS. Cloudflare was essentially doing nothing but pointing it, just like Hover would have, and still nothing. All the ports were forwarded correctly, everything double checked, but it would not pull a new Let's Encrypt. So for me, Nginx Proxy Manager and Let's Encrypt does not work. Don't know why. And maybe it's just an issue when you have Cloudflare in the middle of your DNS, but I tried everything, read all the articles, nothing. In the end, what did work was I went to, I found kind of an article on a different way to go about this. I'm going to pull up my Cloudflare just so I can make sure I'm using the correct lingo here. But essentially what you're going to do is you're actually going to use Cloudflare for your certificate. So what you do essentially is you go into Cloudflare, easier to say, and you create an origin server certificate. And when you create this origin server certificate, essentially it gives you your certificate that you use and your key, and then you go and load those into Nginx Proxy Manager. So Nginx Proxy Manager, you can add a key and you can do a custom one, not from Let's Encrypt, and then you can insert that key and upload it. And really what that does is that allows Cloudflare to communicate with your server with that SSL certificate, and you can kind of bypass using Let's Encrypt. But here's where I ran into another issue. I did sweet. I got my origin certificate. It's all set up. It's all working. It seems to be working, but it's not pulling the certificate. And there was an error that was coming, and you would get to Cloudflare and it would say, hey, there's an issue with your server. And I don't know if you guys have ever gotten that screen from Cloudflare where it's like, hey, your internet works and we're up, but your server's down. And I knew my server wasn't down. So I had turned off all of they call it proxying, right, in the DNS settings. So what Cloudflare can do essentially is Cloudflare can say, we'll be the quote endpoint for what the client sees. So let's say I'm out in the world and I want to access homeassistant.wieger.com. And typically what that would report back is the IP address of my home where my server resides. If you put Cloudflare in the middle and you turn on proxying, the client will just see an IP address that belongs to Cloudflare. And then Cloudflare will essentially get them the last hop. So that proxying kind of shows it doesn't, subject your internal IP address, your home IP address to the world. I had turned that off because I thought that was causing an issue with Let's Encrypt not being able to authenticate and create create a certificate. And you do need proxying turned back on in order for origin certificates with Cloudflare to function properly. So super long story short, if you're using Cloudflare, if you're using Nginx Proxy Manager, easiest way is to create an origin certificate, then make sure that the proxying is turned on your DNS settings, and you will be good to go. Everything is working fantastic. I love it. And that origin server, I think, is good for 15 years, which is great. So don't even have to worry about renewing anything. It's valid. I accessed it from everywhere. My big concern was I was going out of town this week, and I was frantically trying to get this back up because when I'm away from home, my reverse proxy is how I watch my security cameras, right? Because I run SiteHound on a local machine, not cloud-based. It's how I check Home Assistant. Hannah's in bed, nice still. I kind of do my dad duties from away. I check and make sure all the lights are off in the basement, and I check the cameras, make sure everything's locked up, garage doors closed, and I do that remotely. It just makes me feel good. And not being able to do that would have really stressed me out. So that is the answer to the solution. And I didn't know. The only reason this came up is because my Let's Encrypt certificates had finally expired. They had not been renewing this whole time ever since I made the switch, whenever that was, a month, 2 months ago. I just didn't catch it until all of a sudden those expired, and I went to go access my Home Assistant, and it's like, not a valid certificate. I'm like, that's strange. So that's what led me to go down that whole rabbit hole of figuring out what the issue was. So that was a fun little troubleshooting issue, but that one was fun. I enjoyed that one.
Sounds like a couple days worth of work there.
Yeah. I mean, it was a day of just trying to, in between stuff, you can never devote when you have young kids. You can't devote a long period of time. So just an hour here, hour there for that a whole day, and just getting really frustrated that like little things weren't working.
Well, if you got any questions on that, you can send them an email, mwieger@iovercomplicatethings.com.
Yes.
And does that
is correct.
Is that one of your Cloudflare? Does it go I overcomplicate things? I wonder if it's available. I overcomplicate things.
I gotta go buy that domain because that's what I do. That's a great,
No,
that'd be a
it
great
is.
domain.
It does. It actually does sound like. I mean, that's one of those troubleshooting where you're kind of, you're taking a step by step and figuring some things out. Oh, yeah, this. Oh, this. Okay, this wasn't even working anyways, right? Type
Right.
deal. And when you finally figure it out and you get it working, you're like, man, like you feel good, right?
You do.
Yeah.
100%.
Good.
Yeah.
sense of
Well,
accomplishment.
and there's always little things in there. Okay. So just to add one more thing, I had it working, but I went down a whole rabbit hole of thinking it wasn't working. And the issue was that since I fired up, I redid my configuration for Nginx Proxy Manager. I set it to a different IP address, that Docker container. And in Home Assistant, if you're using a proxy, you have to go into Home Assistant and say, trust these proxy IP addresses. Well, I had the old IP address and hadn't done the new one. So I'm like, Home Assistant still isn't working. And I'm like, I swear my reverse proxy is working, but now it's not. And for about 20 minutes there before I realized my error, I thought it was, but I was like, oh, add it to Home Assistant, give it the new IP address. Everything was good. I'm like, okay, finally, it is working like it should be. It's those little red herrings that make you think all the work you just did was for naught.
And there's I don't know about you, but there's just some nights where, I'm up for it. And then there's other nights you're like, it's just going to stay broken.
Right.
Right.
Well,
Just
and there's a
like,
difference between tinkering and fixing mission critical stuff. Right. You and I love the tinkering, setting up a new mining rig, getting all that, like fine tuning that stuff to make sure it's really running really well. Like that's the stuff that I don't mind doing at all. It's when I'm under the gun, like I was trying to get on your show, like I was trying to get out of town this week, and I need something up and running, and that's where it just frustrates you.
No, right on. A couple follow-ups here on the show. One, this looks pretty new to me. This is
that
the
looks
ring.
Extremely new.
Yeah, this is the ring. You always kind of wonder. They always say could be a refurb, and this absolutely could be a refurb. So, but half price, pretty good. New battery in there, so that's pretty sweet. Mike, one more thing before we go. Got this email from back in the winter. I wanted to light some candles out in the shed, right? So it was freaking cold, right? I mean, we had so I went and bought one of those propane top heaters, just a single kind of thing. We may have talked about it here. I think we talked about it here.
We did. Yeah. I think we were actually both talking about what we would use for that.
I bought the CO2 detector. Is that right? CO2? Yeah, I bought the carbon monoxide, right? Okay. Detector just to it's not CO2. It's just, and it doesn't matter. So I bought that just for this reason. So today I got an email, actually came in yesterday, from our friends at Harbor Freight. I'll share it on screen. They recalled them. Now, there were a couple times on that thing when I wonder if there's anything I shouldn't be showing on here. No, I think I'm okay. So there was a couple times where the wind would blow, the flame would go, you hear, and then it'd go, and it was actually like, it was kind of scary. It scared my kids. I mean, my older kids were like, Dad, you shouldn't, like, I don't know if I trust that thing. The notice, so here's what the center line says. This recall is being conducted because in windy weather, the flame can be directed to the rear of the unit, which can melt the tip switch safety shutoff feature at the rear of the heater. This poses a risk that in the future, the heater will, if it tips over, it won't turn off, creating a burn hazard to users. Immediately stop using this item. So Harbor Freight has said just pop into the store with it and they'll give you a gift card for its value.
Oh, okay.
And now I've got to kind of rethink my heating. The good news is I probably got 4 months before I need to worry about a heater in the shed again. Mike, if you were it's an enclosed shed. It's not airtight. There's plenty of air gets into that shed. If you were gonna heat a shed like that, or you wanted a little personal, man, I'll tell you what, electrical heat is just not efficient, right? I mean, it's so expensive. What would you put in there? What would you use?
The non-read call version of what you had. Honestly, I love those things. Yeah, those little dual burners. I'd go to Lowe's. They are more expensive from Lowe's, But
Yeah,
I'd go to
'cause they're
Lowe's.
really-
I'd get the double burner because they're not the ones that burn you when they tip over.
Yeah.
But I'd probably just go grab one of those again. I like those things.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great. I mean, it at 10 below, it would bring the shed up to about 45 or 50, which
Yeah.
is the single. Yeah. So Joe had to look it up. Carbon monoxide is just CO.
It makes because
That's where I was
mono
getting.
one,
right. Yeah.
carbon dioxide,
CO2
di
is what we breathe out.
yeah,
Carbon
dioxide,
dioxide.
2 O's,
There we go.
right? So it'd be CO2.
Little science. Like
Bringing me back to like fifth grade
graders.
science. Yeah, mono and di. We got to go back to our
Yikes.
words.
It's been a long week. Let's just put it that way. So I'll be making a trip. I think I have to figure out where our Harbor Freight is here in town, and that's a dangerous store to
That's a good
go
question.
into.
Oh,
because-
100%.
Yeah.
Affordable tools.
Yeah, you just come out with well, I needed a bubble jack. For what? Well, I don't know. I needed a
It was
bubble
$10 though.
jack.
I got a blowtorch too.
I got
It was free with purchase of the $10 bubble jack.
bubble jack. And I couldn't help but get the $15.99 floor creeper, Like, do you ever work on your car? No, but I just thought if I needed to get under the car for some reason, it'd be good to have a floor creeper. Those, it's $15.
Yeah.
So yeah, but you lay on that thing and one of the wheels just snaps off immediately, right? I mean, Harbor Freight's kind of questionable, right? I mean,
I think it's I don't know.
you think it's
I
okay?
trust it.
Okay. All right, well, I did too, and now until they sold me this,
I was gonna say until point proven.
until the shed burned down.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, anything else, Mike?
No. No. That my SSL issue was just that was my thing.
It's all done though. You got it all figured out.
Oh yeah,
You're
it's
good.
working great.
You're in good shape.
Yep. All good.
You're in good shape. Well, by next week, I'll have tested we're going to work on the ring this weekend. I tell you what, so I have been a slug probably since, I don't know, this time last year. I literally have not worked out probably in a year. So I was wondering why I was so tired. This week I started working out again. Dude, like the body is like, what are you doing to me?
We were really enjoying that last year.
Oh man, I got on the scale at work and I just horrified. And that was the one I've been avoiding the scale for a while. And it was that one moment I'm like, all right, jackass, you need to get this thing rolling again.
Yeah.
So this week I've easing back in. Like it's not like I'm, I didn't like go, everybody goes, oh, I ran a 5K. And you're like, that's not the way you get back into a workout. Like
that's good for you though.
Just simple stuff.
Getting back in. It's the day one stuff. And you're the type of person though, like you get kind of addicted to workouts. You'll be back in no time.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it'll be 2 weeks. Like for me, it was a month. This getting back into it after COVID was a month before I was like, oh, okay, now I'm good. Like now it's not a bad deal waking up. I got wrangled into doing mark to market though, Jim, and I am not a runner.
Oh,
at all.
That's a
but
party,
luckily,
dude.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Market to market's a party.
And they gave me one of the really short. I have like 2 legs that totals like 7 miles, so it's not bad.
So for those listening, market to market started as a race. It's from the old market in Omaha to the Haymarket in Lincoln. So 102 miles, 110 miles, something like that. And you had teams of 6 or 7 or whatever, and it would take most of the morning. Somewhere between 6 and 10, these teams would start, and you would run in these legs. They were like relay legs, and sometime in the afternoon, you got into Lincoln, whatever, how long it takes to. I think I ran it once or twice, and I think we did it like in 8 hours, something like 7-8 hours. But it's kind of nobody. Well, there's some people who take it seriously, but most people don't. So we had teams that were making hundreds of Jello shots for this, just for this. Like, and
I like that style.
Oh yeah, they were called Run Jovi, which was pretty great. So they were dressed up in 80s hairband costumes, and they ran when you were running. You were dressed as an 80s hairband, whatever. And they had stickers. They had their own stickers. And so they were going around as they were going around, they were putting their Run Jovi stickers all over things. And I think they did it 5 or 6 years in a row. and they got to be like locally famous. Everybody knew
As the Run Jovi guys.
the Run Jovi team.
Okay.
And so, well, when's market to market?
Middle of September.
Oh, and where does it start now? Where are they?
I have no idea.
Oh,
It's a very good question.
Yeah, it literally was the old market, and then
I think it is.
market, but then
I think it still is.
Are they back? Are they back to that?
I think so.
Okay, because there were some areas that closed down, and they had to move they've had to move the course around a little bit.
Yeah, I should go ahead and look at the map.
All right. Yeah. Well, you got some time. I mean, you got 3 weeks to get in shape for it.
Well, and I see. So I've been getting in shape.
But you've been playing hockey. You're okay.
Well, and I've been working out at 5 a.m. for the last 2 months, right? Every morning. And so I'm in good shape. There's not like running is different. There's a difference in running long distance and all the other being in shapes. And I'm getting back in shape, but long distance running, not my thing.
Yeah, I'm done with it too, but I do need to get some semblance. Yeah, I'm 30 over, and it's kind of like, all right, this is getting a little embarrassing. It's time to. It's kind of time. I put the Peloton app back on my phone. I need to start getting on the treadmill that we bought. I didn't show you the treadmill. Did we?
No, you didn't show it to me. No, I didn't see that.
Losers. Well, next time you're over here.
Yeah.
I just
in 2 years.
It's usually how it goes. Exactly. No, you're right. I just I put I have a touch screen, a big 24-inch touch screen that I put on one of those mobile TV mounts that where you can put TV on and move it around.
Oh yeah.
And then it wasn't quite high enough, so I just found a cardboard box and I put it up underneath it, so it sits perfectly at eye level now. And so there's no excuse. Like I need to get my fat ass on the treadmill and get watching some YouTube videos instead of sitting in this thing. Like, just
to wear your Apple Watch.
I did. Oh yeah.
We'll just start a competition with me and then
Yeah.
you're competitive.
You're
and
right.
just like,
all right. Game on.
Beat me.
All right.
So next Thursday we'll report back who's winning.
Yeah. I'm like today I'm mostly closed. Like everything except the red is closed at this point. So, I've got the workout and the standing. It's the steps or the activity. Red is activity, right?
Yeah. Red's see, it's green for me on days where I don't do a formal workout.
Red is
struggle
move,
to get the exercise.
Green is exercise. Blue is stand.
Yeah.
And so I'm 82% of the way on the move goal. But yeah, just small steps. I'll be running marathons next week.
Hey.
We are live every Thursday. You know me. We're live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. If you want to join us in the Discord group, head out to theaverageguy.tv/Discord. Leave us a message, homegadgetgeeks.com. We'd love to have your messages played on the show like we played Jim Shoemaker's on the show. Jim, sorry, it took me 2 months to get there. It actually worked out well with the topics tonight, so kind of glad I waited anyways. If you want to send me an email, if you got some feedback, if you want to start some dialogue, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Of course, big thanks to Christian over at Maple Grove Partners. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting. If you need a website set up, he specializes in WordPress, but the kid can do anything. So if you want to start a website, you need a website, whatever, contact maplegrovepartners.com. Plans start as little as $10. Everything is going up in price, although apparently lumber's coming back. So that maybe
it is. I went and bought lumber to make some cornhole boards last weekend, and finally it was
reasonable?
Not back to normal, but reasonable.
Reasonable. Okay.
What did I pay? I paid $5-6 for a 2x4.
All right, so about halfway back,
which is down from 8.
Yeah, but it was 2.
But
right?
it was $250. Yeah, they should be around $253.
Yeah. So no inflation at Maple Grove Partners, maplegrovepartners.com. Love to see you next week. Working on Bob and Ryan again for, is this July, August? Trying to get them back here in August and starting to work on just kind of an overall slate of what we're doing here for the fall. So I'm excited for it. Of course, we're coming up on 500 in 2 weeks, and we'll throw a little party for that one. Want to thank you for coming out and joining us live tonight. If you're listening to the recorded version, thanks for listening. If you made it this far, it's a miracle. So thanks for coming out. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.